This ultimate guide to question 2 from the OCR GCSE English Language Paper 1 will show you exactly what you need to do to get full marks. After explaining the mark scheme in straightforward English, I will include useful phrases that you can plonk straight into your own response before moving on to an actual past paper question from November 2018. I will show you how to annotate the text before giving you the opportunity to write your own response. My model 6 out of 6 response will then appear on screen, and I'll talk you through how it achieved the criteria in the top bands of the mark scheme and show you the examiner's indicative contents. But practice really does make perfect, and so I will then give you a second opportunity to write a perfect 6 out of 6 similarity response, with a question coming this time from an adapted past Edexcel GCSE paper. I will share a response for this as well, for you to compare with your own, before concluding the video with final crucial tips and advice. Let's get you high marks for OCR GCSE English Language Paper 1, Question 2. You're watching Schofield on Shakespeare. So, there are 6 marks for this question, in which you need to show how well you can synthesize ideas from different parts of both texts. What exactly do we mean by synthesize? Well, for me it means efficiently combining different ideas from different places in the text together. You also need to show a perceptive understanding of similarities between the two texts. Note, differences are not required and will not be credited. And when making these points about the similarities, you need to be writing in detail and using short, pertinent, embedded quotations. When writing about similarities, you may find these phrases on screen helpful. Similarly, both passages, an obvious similarity is, in the same way. Time now to do some practice. Here's the question from the November 2018 Paper 1. We are asked, in both texts the writers describe their jobs. What are the similarities between their experiences of work? Draw on evidence from both texts to support your answer. Now for the texts. You need to read them. Probably the easiest thing for you to do is download the November 2018 reading booklet from the OCR website. You're watching on screen now how to do this. However, I will also display the text on individual slides within this video, which will proceed at 5-second intervals in case you would prefer to read the text this way. Either way, get reading. When approaching these questions, even those for which only a relatively low number of marks are available, do plan, albeit briefly, annotate, think. Your annotations could look something like those about to appear on screen. Press pause when they appear if you would like to scrutinise in more detail. Hopefully that's given you some really good ideas. Time now to write your response. In the exam booklet, you are given one side of A4 to complete the response, for which 6 marks are available. It can be tricky to estimate timings for individual sections, but of course you have 2 hours for the full exam and there are a total of 80 marks available. Mathematically speaking, a bit crude, you would expect to spend no more than 10 minutes on this. Get cracking. Press pause. The extracts will appear again at brief intervals. How did you get on? Appropriately detailed, no waffle, plenty of synthesized points about the similarities with supporting quotations from both passages? Well, here's what I wrote. In text 1, the wages are so fearfully low, and similarly in text 2, the suggestion that in the future he will gain a sizable rise from the living wage implies that his current salary is significantly below the figure considered sufficient for an adult to live on. Both texts refer to long working hours. The author of text 1 talks of having to work so many hours, whilst in text 2 he refers to long shift patterns, including sometimes working until midnight on Friday. Another similarity is that both work environments are considered unhealthy, although for different reasons. In text 2, working in a fast food restaurant is likely to make you pile on the pounds, whereas, even more dangerously in text 1, the intensive work environment may hurry some of the workers to their graves. Finally, both writers emphasise the importance of government intervention in their workplaces. In text 1, the writer implicitly criticises the inadequacy of governments merely inquiring and reporting, as opposed to taking action, whilst in text 2, the reference to the government bringing in the living wage implies that prior to this, some fast food employers may have been paying inadequate wages. How does this response meet the top band of the mark scheme? Well, firstly note the way I synthesise appropriate ideas and evidence from a number of different parts of the two texts. There are 6 embedded quotations on screen now within just 3 sentences. Here's where they come from within the two texts. Note also the perceptive understanding of similarities, as seen here when I point out the unhealthiness of both work environments, but for different reasons. I'd imagine that it's pretty difficult to work in McDonald's and avoid eating a lot of unhealthy rubbish. More seriously, for those working in that factory in Crewe, death could ensue. Finally, note the sharp, detailed focus on the question and the regular comparisons about the similarities, as seen in words and phrases such as another similarity, both writers, and whilst. Remember also that the examiner is given some indicative content, some suggested points that a candidate might make to help them with their marking. These are only suggestions, but press pause to read them through. Aficionados of these single question GCSE videos may have expected me to be issuing you now with a cheery, probably cheesy conclusion. Not one bit. Getting a grade 9 is all about practice, so have a go at this question, which I have plundered and adapted from a past Edexcel paper. In both texts, the writers show people experiencing change. What are the similarities between the writer's experiences and feelings? Draw on evidence from both texts to support your answer. Now for the texts. As before, you need to read them. As before, you can see before your own eyes exactly how to get hold of these texts within a PDF format. It's the Edexcel June 2017 paper 2 which you are after. Alternatively, you can just refer to the extracts which will appear on individual slides within this video after I have stopped whittering on. Either way, get reading.
Time to get on with it. Write your response, aiming to make your points about the similarities even more precise, succinct, and detailed where necessary. Allow yourself up to 10 minutes. Press pause. As usual, the text will reappear in case you require them. Time to share my own response to this question. In both texts, the writers have moved to new locations in which space is far more limited. In text 1, the writer states that storage space is at a premium, whilst in text 2, the writer has moved into a much smaller house with 2 small but ship-shaped bedrooms and a tiny downstairs room. When moving to their new locations, it was difficult for both writers to decide what to take with them and what to leave behind. For instance, in text 2, the writer stared in amazement at the junk she needed to sort through. And in text 1, far more extremely, the writer had to pick out the barest essentials to serve her for the next 7 years. Additionally, both writers considered underhand means of bringing extra items with them. In text 1, we hear about the possibility of secreting a few more things, which is unlikely to be successful. Whereas more successfully in text 2, a husband appears to have been hoodwinked. I've also sneaked in one classy fold-up. Finally, both writers share a sense of loss about their change in circumstances. Although the writer of text 2 is clearly trying to make the best of things, the final word of the piece, honest, hints that she probably does feel the changes are a bit sad. Similarly, the writer of text 1 is clearly dissatisfied with her life, as shown by questions such as what on earth for, which angrily highlight the pointlessness of trying to break any of the multitude of ridiculous rules.
So, good Lord, what is required to get 6 out of 6 for this question? Well, you need to be concise with your phrasing and pick out a minimum of 3 similarities between the 2 texts. Use short embedded quotations to back up your choices and aim to pick out some of the more interesting implicit similarities as well as those more obvious explicit ones. Good luck with it all, and many thanks for watching Schofield on Shakespeare.